So it has gone from being a 5-year payback to a 4-year payback. You'll also notice that there are 8 years of payment here rather than the original 11 years.
Yeah, Gary, and let's talk a little bit about, we've got 4 different funds. You got payroll, sanitation, sewer, and IS. And it doesn't mean that it can be out of this particular order. These are one of 4. And if this is how the loan schedule would go, this is how the payment would go back to those. And I want to share this 2.5 interest up here. 10-year bonds in today's rate, the 10-year bond today, and this is only going out to 2023, which is 7 years from now. The 10-year bond was 1.66 today. The 5-year bond is under 1%. I mean, it's really dropped. We're going to make some points on that, but it's important to know that in this world of ours today, effectively, there's $10 trillion in negative interest rate bonds. And I don't know, a lot of people don't understand what that means. So I'll give you an example. If you put money into a negative interest rate bond that was a 0.12, let's say I put $1,000 into this bond, a German bond that's a negative 0.12 rate. That means in 10 years, instead of getting your $1,000 back, you're going to get $988 back in 10 years. And there's 10 trillion of this stuff floating around the world right now as we speak. Okay, go on.
Okay. So, and we'll talk a little bit more about interest rates in a few moments. So the payroll service fund, essentially, we feel can use the investment, if you will. Sanitation fund is also about $1.3 million, and we're talking about working capital here. Working capital, according to a council resolution that was passed in 2011, sets the working capital for each of our general fund, special revenue funds, internal service funds, and enterprise funds at varying between 2 and 3 months of working capital. Working capital is calculated by looking at calculating up the annual operating budget in the succeeding budget year divided by 12 and then multiplied by 3. So you have, if you have a 3-month, if you have a 2-month, you divide by 12, multiply by 2. So at any rate, the balances I'm talking about are those council policies for retained earnings, if you will, or operating capital. And the purpose of operating capital, of course, is to continue the business of the city. So we have revenues go up and down, and we need to make sure that we're able to cover our expenses during those times that revenues fluctuate.
Okay, and let's talk about that a little bit. So in 2011, this council, not this particular council, but the council, the city of Moscow, made in practice that you had to have 3 months operating monies in those accounts. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what you just said. And so with this in mind, folks, what we're doing is we're taking whatever that 3 months is and making certain that we're well above that operation so it does not affect what we're doing in any of those funds. In other words, we're not stopping projects. We're not moving stuff around where we have to rob Peter to pay Paul. We're doing it in an orderly fashion that makes sense. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, these, and the reason I mentioned the working capital is one of the questions that came up is what projects are being delayed or aren't moving forward, or are rates going to go up because of this? And the answer is no. Working capital, for instance, as I noted in sanitation, working capital is about $1.3 million. So that money then can be utilized. It would just be invested. It's sitting there. We maintain that balance to make sure that we can keep up. Okay, and that, again, that was the council's policy. So we would utilize $250,000 from that fund, and sewer fund as well has a little higher balance because of the highly capital nature of that budget, because their operations are so much higher. And then the information systems isn't a working capital fund, it's an accumulation fund. And the accumulation is for purchase of information systems equipment. So there's a balance in there. It's all according to an amortization schedule, obsolescence schedule. So you look at what you're going to spend it on, and then you invest up until the time that you use it. That way you can continue to have your money work for you. So in essence, this is the cutoff right here where this would be the last investment, and then it starts paying back. So these funds up here, instead of being paid toward the airport, would begin to be paid back to these enterprise funds or internal service funds, payroll service fund with interest. And that is utilizing the 2.5% interest rate. So that is the plan so far. As I said, it's being treated as an investment. We regularly invest city funds. We invest them in the local government investment pool, which right now is yielding about 0.51%. The local government investment pool is very safe and it's very liquid. So we have, if we have need for funding immediately, the LGIP is where you want to put the money. We also do estimates, and we're developing our long-range financial plan. We continue to work on that. Hopefully, as we get that closer to fruition, we will be able to take a more long-range plan on these investments. We just talked to an investment advisor the other day, and he quoted us a rate at a 4-year fixed rate, non-callable bond at just under 1%. So you can get callable bonds that are worth a little more. Of course, the reason that they pay more is because the issuing entity can call the bonds at any time, and if the interest rate was higher, if interest rates goes down, they're going to call the bonds. If it goes up, they're going to keep them. So at any rate, I'm having a great refresher course on bonds myself. Okay, so this is what we have today. So you can see there's a structure, and it's all set up with a 2.5% interest rate. Okay, this is a different interest rate, and this is something the council may want to consider.
Can I stick something in here?
Absolutely.
And the reason you'd say, well, okay, why in the world would the council want to go with the 1% interest rate? And earlier in the conversation, the presentation I made, and I was talking about these $10 trillion in bonds across the world that are negative interest rates. Well, just maybe that 1% may be a good rate. We don't know, but it's the due diligence of this council each and every year to see what the significance may or may not be, because that saves us money. And when I'm saying us, I'm talking about people that live in the city of Moscow, which makes good sense. So that's why we're talking about it. And we have to take a look at different things. And while I'm at it, Gary, I want to share with everybody when we first came up with a $2.5 million presentation for the airport as well as the city of Pullman to start things off, you know, that was not an easy decision by this council, but the majority of the council passed it. And guess what? They made the absolute correct decision. And the reason they made the correct decisions, ladies and gentlemen, is because of this. They didn't do this for self-gain. They did this for the betterment of our community and the Palouse. And if we don't look forward about what we're doing, and I'm not talking about next year, I'm talking about the decades ahead of us when there's none of these people, including me up here, leading the charge, you've got an airport. Without what we're doing, we have no airport. We know that. This is either or. And so this is the direction we're headed. And I'm proud of this council for being able to pass this. I just thought I'd throw that out there, Gary.
Okay, so again, this is just an alternative that we thought we'd throw out for council consideration. If the council, and you have to remember, the 2.5% interest rate was not something the council mandated. It was appeared to be, based on the market at that time, a fairly lucrative return, but not out of reach. Since that time, as the mayor's indicated, those bond rates have fallen. So is that 2.5%? And you have to remember, every year is a new appropriation. So you're not tied in because you said it at the beginning. Council could make that decision. But as you can see, the interest rates here are much less than the interest rates in the previous example, by $15,000 in these 2 years. So there is a situation where those actually
What you borrowed.
less interest rate, yeah, the borrowed amount would be less as
It's
well.
141,000 plus less.
Okay, and part of that, of course, the reason is the general fund made the first payment.
Numbers is one of my most favorite things to do. It's boring to a lot of people, the stuff I'm talking about, but I absolutely love this stuff because this is what the world's about today. And for those of you that do or do not know this, the Fed did not raise rates last week. And when they didn't raise rates, the 10-year went right down, as did rates throughout the entire world. And we actually, with the 1.66, is one of the highest 10-year bonds in a good country. And I'm not talking about a Greece or Brazil or some place that's ready to collapse at any moment. I'm talking about big industrial countries that make a difference in the entire world. And this is the stuff I love to get up about 3:30 or 4 in the morning and watch. So just thought I'd share that with everybody.
Okay. So, another alternative. This again, assuming a 2.5% interest rate, if that continues, the council, as when the proposal was first brought forward, this number was $228,000, not the $216,705. So the council could elect to go back, get it back to the original 228, and that would affect it as well. Again, just another alternative for the council to consider. Lastly, what happens if you add that 228 back where it was originally intended and went to a 1% interest rate? And as you can see, you have interest savings again down here, but you also have a more balanced approach up front. So those are all things the council could do. Now, we do have an investment policy, and that investment policy authorizes the finance director to follow the prudent man investment policy, invest in those sorts of things that can be done according to the Idaho Code. Council reviewed that policy in 2010 and passed it. And Don Palmer, for one, certainly thought that this was a prudent investment after looking at the finance condition of our finances. And I would agree with the balances that we currently carry. We have about $10 million overall in operating capital across every operation in the city. So certainly this is a model that we can follow, and it makes good sense, at least from my perspective. So